Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Coffee with Innovate Finance, our podcast series where we talk to industry leaders on the future of financial services and the future of fintech and innovation more broadly. I'm Janine Hurt. I'm CEO of Innovate Finance, and I am so incredibly excited to have my guest with me today, Helen Child, founder of Open Banking Excellence. Helen, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Janine, thank you for inviting me, and what a lovely warm welcome. We've postponed this a couple of times, so it's an absolute pleasure to sit down and have a virtual cup of coffee with you. How you
And
doing?
I have to say, on a personal basis, I'm so excited to speak with you because you really are, I would say, such an inspiration across the industry, such a mentor, and really just such an example of a female leader that is making the world a better place. So really, really keen to speak with you today. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
So, Helen, let's begin because we know that OBE is the world's leading community of open banking and open finance pioneers from across the breadth of financial services, including banks, fintechs, big tech, and other industry bodies. And you really are the global center of the community and knowledge driving change in open finance. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your background and your journey in financial services and how you got to the point of launching OBE.
Oh, okay. Two parts to that then. So, years ago, in fact, probably more decades than ever I will admit to, I was the founder and former chief exec of a card issuing bank. We were the first EMI to be awarded licenses from both Visa and MasterCard. Everybody does it now, but back in the day, we were the first, and by anybody's benchmark, I had an amazing team to work alongside. So really, I've always liked to be at the forefront, that pioneering part of payments and innovation. And, I really get excited about driving it forward. I always say I probably didn't get enough Lego bricks when I was little. So it's the building that excites me. And I've told the next part of the story so many times, but it is, I have to pinch myself because it's a phenomenal story. So a couple of years ago, I was at one of those networking events pre-COVID where there was guys serving warm wine in kilts, and it was an event sponsored by FinTech Scotland. So give them a shout. And there was 38 open banking pioneers in a room talking about open banking. A friend passed me a mic and said, "Come on, H, let's rift." And whatever rifting is, I am doing it now. And because my background is payments and because of the card issuing, I really, really understood open banking payments and the changes that it could make to our society and particularly financial inclusion, which is now in the DNA of OBE. And at the end of that session, everybody said, this is great. Can we do it again? And I've got a mic in my hand. So what can I say other than yes? And the truth is, Janine, the next morning, I had to ring a friend as a chief executive, and she had some Ruth, she's called, from ThoughtWorks, and she has some very trendy offices in Soho with the obligatory sort of beanbags and table tennis tables, and I got everybody together again, and MasterCard chipped in. I think it was probably about £500 for pizzas and a couple of beers, and I genuinely thought that was it. But what I will tell you, and this is how we have built OBE, is the speakers that we have then. It was when the FCA was doing their shout out for financial inclusion. And so I had a whole panel talking about financial inclusion. So when I look at it instinctively, right back then, I was building what is now a global community on values. And everybody said, we'll do this again. And we did. So we outgrew ThoughtWorks. We then went to Yapily. And then pre-pandemic, we were at Devonshire Square and Equinix. And on our last campfire before lockdown, and we all crashed into lockdown, if you can remember, we were up against sort of every health and safety reg because we had, probably too many people in, and we had to sort of talk nicely to the security guards. And when we went online, it was just a phenomenal growth. Amazing. Absolutely took off. And now in January, we have our first live campfire in Salesforce's amazing offices. So 40 floors high, sort of so you're shoulder to shoulder with a Gherkin. So our campfire in the clouds. So
amazing.
It's been an amazing journey. It truly, truly has. And I have to pinch myself. So from those 38 fintech pioneers, and I heard something that evening that sort of made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and it was really exciting. To now a global community of 17,500, 18,000 plus. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing, Helen. And it's so interesting to hear sort of the initial stories and to where you are now and that real scaling journey in a sense. I'd love to hear a bit more about the vision and the mission of OBE today. And what are the core problems that you're trying to solve?
So it's a very good question. First of all, I always think what we do, it's a privilege, okay? And very much like you, Janine, it's a privilege to be, part of a community at this moment in time. So our mission really is quite simply, we want to create exceptional platforms and content that promote knowledge sharing. And so if we tell our client stories and all the industry stories, and create those partnerships with the industry, we're going to accelerate the adoption of open banking and open finance. And that has got to provide a platform for a better, more fair and equitable world where financial inclusion has a real part to play. And if you think about it in very simple terms, first of all, a rising tide in all the ships will sail. So if we promote the growth trajectory of open banking, open finance in the UK and now globally, then that has got to be good for everybody. And quite simply, how do we do that? Yes, we tell our client stories through content, but it's for people, isn't it? So when you get great people together, amazing things will happen. And it is that power of collaboration. It truly, truly is. One of the, when I just come back from Brazil, and I gathered lots of information from various stakeholders in the UK and said, right, what are the messages you would like me to share? And I spoke to one of our regulators, and as you know, we've got quite a few, and they said the key message is collaboration. They thought they had really got it right, collaborating with the fintechs in the ecosystem. And when they look back now, they wish they'd done more collaboration. And, it's always been in our strapline, maybe instinctively, but it is the absolute heart of how we will continue to drive open banking forward in the UK and globally too.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I think that that premise actually extends even beyond just open banking, because it's something we talk a lot about on the umbrella of overarching fintech as well. Just looking at moving forward, progressing through partnerships, through collaboration. It's very clear that that is one of the ways that you differentiate from other firms. But are there other areas that you distinguish yourself or differentiate from other players within the space?
Yes, I think there is. First and foremost, we're not a conference organisation. We work very closely with Money 2020. We're strategic partners with them, and we're not a news title. We actually do have a very strong and a very talented PR team, and they are behind some of the biggest stories in fintech, both in the broadsheets and the fintech press. And they recently got a fintech and exclusive on Sky. And, it doesn't get much better than that. So what are we? We're a community. In Brazil, we call it a familia. And that's really how we differentiate. We work very, very hard. Somebody recently said, oh, Helen, you're one of the biggest cheerleaders for open banking. And for cheerleading, I would say advocate, but, either way, okay, that's what we do. We want to showcase that pioneering talent that we have in our community, and both in the private sector and the public sector. I often talk about the best use case we have in the UK is actually HMRC, and right now the UK is at the vanguard. We created the blueprint for open banking, so the best use case in the UK by default is the best use case in the world. And HMRC have just recently, I got these figures, 7.9 billion pounds, that's £1 billion worth of open banking transactions they collected online. That was a seamless, efficient, great UX for the customers. They collected those payments, and most people didn't know it was about open banking. And if you add up all the open banking payments in the globe right now, I reckon they wouldn't even get close to 7.9 billion. And that is phenomenal, because now the government are rolling that out through 43 different agencies. So they are, really leading the way in open banking. So part of what we do is telling those stories to inform and inspire. A lot of it, what we do is we create connections with purpose, going back to when you get great people together, a spark and something amazing will happen. And we create those connections so people can realize, their potential, the impact they will have when they do something together. Yeah. So it's more of being a family and a community, but we are a commercial organization. I have to pay my team, okay, but we are a very values-driven organization. So yes, we run a sponsorship model, but we don't have a pay-to-play model. We truly don't. We have a very strong PR team. Everybody is welcome at OBE. And we now have a very strong consultancy arm where, if you think about it, Janine, just for a moment, there's a moment in time, and right now we have a real depth of talent in the UK, a real depth. And it is for a moment in time, whether that moment is for 3 years, and if I have my way and you have your way, it will be for 5 years, for 10 years. We'll keep stretching that out. But right now, we can put talent and place talent around the world. So we've got, with our partners out in Saudi, people helping to write those standards out in Saudi. So they've taken the lessons learned from the UK and they're changing them. So we had a lot of privileges for being the first in the market, but now the talent that is out in Saudi through our consultancy model is actually putting the use case first and actually writing the standards a little differently. So we are this amazing organization, to come back to your question, that advocates for open banking. Yes, we have a PR team. Yes, we tell our stories of everybody in our community to inspire and inform. But above and beyond that, it's about making those connections and people then making something exciting happen.
So Helen, let's stick, because I think that is absolutely phenomenal. And I so agree in terms of just the community and the family sense. Let's dig a bit deeper into some of the points you just made with regards to open banking, and particularly looking at our UK's influence on the global ecosystem as well. I mean, we know open banking is truly a huge development in our day-to-day lives with so much potential. Are you happy with where we are at in terms of open banking in the UK? And is there more that we can do as an industry?
Oh, Janine, that's a great question. Okay, so am I happy? I'm very proud to have gone out to Saudi and spoken to Saudi Payments, the equivalent of our Pay.UK, the payment service operator, and spoke and talked about open banking. Immensely proud to have been invited by the British consulate to fly the flag for the UK. And I came back from Brazil having learnt a huge amount from the Brazilian market. So I'm hugely proud of where we are. And I think we all should be. However, I don't think we should be complacent. I think that's the flip side. And because we were the first to market, and the Fingleton report said we created the blueprint, and that was true. Other countries, and Brazil in particular, just focus on them for a moment. They very astutely sent their regulator to talk to all the CMA 9 banks. They also went out to India, to be fair. And they came back and they launched differently. They learned from us, and they could leapfrog a lot of our learnings. Now, that's one of the disadvantages of being first. We were, forging ahead, being at the vanguard. So when out in Saudi, we're now looking at the UK standards, which were written, the first time ever written, they were written very functionally. Now they're written around the use case. So, that's the North Star, if you will. So different principles are applied. So what I would love to see is that, the regulator in Brazil has a real vision. Yeah. I would like us collectively as a community to say, okay, we now have a vision globally. I still believe that we can set those benchmarks and be known to lead globally. But I think, we've got a very small amount of time to capture that moment. And I do believe it's now. I truly do.
It is absolutely urgent. So I echo those. I think our ecosystems echo that as well. Helen, what are the trends that you see in the open banking space that are most exciting to you?
Crikey, there's probably three, I think. I mean, first of all, I think that, right now we're going through some change, with OBIE and the reporting that's going on through SWAG and JROC, and that CMA order coming to an end, and that's the consultation process they'll be reporting on in January. So all that is happening as an exciting backdrop. But the trends, so I spent most of the summer speaking to chief execs to get their feedback on what we should talk about for next year. And that's another reason that I will always put down for our growth. That's because we've listened. And the trends, okay, very, very simple. Open banking and open data, split out the two, okay, talk about them very, very separately and keep it real. There is a real desire now to talk about a fair and equitable business model and how we monetize data. So a fair and equitable business model is all around putting some of those trust frameworks that we all know from the card processing world, those dispute management processes in place. And so we can, grow as a community, as a sector, and scale for that growth. And also the monetizing of data that needs a different type of business model, because right now it's a bit of a zero-sum game all round. So those are the types of things that people are wanting to talk about. But again, when I went out to Brazil, I segmented the conversation to payments and to data. And, we're not done there, irrespective of the CMA order coming to an end. My big message would be, we're not done yet. And that's the biggest trend. There's huge amounts of growth, huge amounts of growth and potential that we all need to be working towards together to capture.
And so, Helen, changing tack slightly, because I know this is an area you're also very passionate about, in addition to open banking, but across the sector more broadly, thinking about diversity and inclusion in the industry. What are your thoughts on it, and what could we do better?
Janine, so I will always pass the mic to a woman whenever I can. I will, full stop. And I'm quite vocal about that as well. Okay. I recently was talking at FinTouch in Sao Paulo, and I set them a mission. So Janine, if you might join me, you care to accept it. So the mission, should you care to accept it, was everybody in our communities, okay, chooses to mentor two bright, intelligent, vibrant, brilliant females. Collectively, I believe we will go a long way to changing the face of financial services. So at the beginning, you talked about mentoring. It's something that I feel very passionately about. I was very lucky along the way to meet some very inspiring females. And behind the scenes, I do my level best to mentor as many females as I can. But I think collectively, if everybody, male or female, mentor two females together, we would single-handedly change the face. Yes, there's quotas and tick boxes we should all be looking at, but I think there's something we can all do and feel very proud about doing it.
Helen, I love that. And actually, I've got a great story, because I was a few weeks ago, I was speaking at a conference at Citi, the large bank, and I actually made the exact same challenge, only I wasn't as ambitious as you, because I told everyone in the audience, I gave them the challenge of mentoring one female, and you've done two, and I think that's a much better. So I need to learn and be more ambitious in the next round. So really good.
Well, I didn't know. So great minds think alike, Janine. I probably got the clip from what I was saying, so I'll post it and reference you as well.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. So really, really good. So then on that same note, because you are a very established female leader and you're really an inspiration, do you have any advice for females that are on a similar journey as to yourself?
Oh, now I'd like to get your thoughts on this one as well. I would always say, stick to your values and don't get embroiled in what I always call the sort of the macho political shenanigans. Just don't. Stick to your values always. Whenever you have the opportunity, support and help another female. It is that simple. And I will sort of tell my team, well, if ever your back's against the wall, and it's going to be, always make a values-driven choice, because then you can put your head on your pillow and sleep at night. And I think it just comes, basically down to that. And running a profitable business and being values-driven can go hand in hand. It really, really does. Yeah.
And
So that's my advice. Yeah. And go on, and yours would be?
No, completely the same, Helen. I think that's why you're such an inspiration. And it really is very much, business is also relationships. So treat people the way you want to be treated, sort of a development on the golden rule. Treat them ethically. And also, you don't need to be a man to be successful. You should value the differences about being a female in a leadership role. And maybe that is around the warmth. Maybe that is about the empathy, about thinking of other females and other men as well in your team, and just bring that out and really build on that. So well done.
It's karma, isn't it? It's commercial karma. What you give out, you'll get back. It truly is karma. Yeah. We've got a coach at OBE, a guy called Stu. He's just got an MBE from the Queen, so he must be doing something right. With Stu and this really cool Buddhist called Charlie, who's written a book called Wake Up to Sleep. We have a coaching program, and it's fascinating to take time out with your team and to learn. And I've been dying to sort of launch it, and I want to call it Community Cuddles. I don't know, my marketing team want to call it. But I think it would be really good, particularly as we go into whatever we're about to go into, whether it be a recession or a credit squeeze, as we're calling it right now. I think, like we did through COVID, I mean, we really found our place in the community through COVID, and undoubtedly, we'll be pulling on those learnings to do that again. But it is, first and foremost, you need to look after the people. We all learned that, didn't we, last time around?
I love that name, Community Cuddles. So I think
we'll do it. I'll introduce you to Stu and to Charlie. Yeah.
That's great. Good. Well, Helen, we've had some great insight from you, both on leadership and on OBE and on open banking. Really, as a final question, I'd love to hear what's next for OBE. Any exciting news that we should be looking out for?
Well, I think there's lots of exciting news for open banking in general. But there's a couple of things to look out for. We are about to launch the Global Open Finance Index. So this is a pioneering piece of work that we're doing with the World Bank, with Oxford University, with Accenture, with the DIT, and your good selves and our friends at NatWest. So this will be the first data-driven view of open banking, open finance around the world. And what I've learned now is that this needs to be a continuing piece of work, and it will be a benchmark study. So we will be launching this before Christmas, and then again, we will be talking about this in our first campfire in the clouds at Salesforce in January. And I have to say, and I'll give them a really big shout out, the DIT have been wonderful in terms of, the support that they have given us behind the scenes, in access to embassies and consulates around the world to help with the data collection. So there's been two parts. There's been the qualitative and the quantitative research. And I'm excited to launch that. And I'm really excited, going back to what we were saying before about the UK consolidating its position and building from it. I believe that the index is a platform from which we can all do that. So that's one exciting thing. We have got a very exciting agenda next year in terms of driving the conversation forward, and a very busy schedule in terms of creating some more content and telling more stories. So I also think that with the changes that are happening with open banking and open finance, and the industry is we're not done yet.
Great. Lots to look forward to. And Helen, thank you so much for taking the time. It was such a lovely conversation. Lovely to hear some more of your insights. So thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for listening in. So please stay tuned for the next edition of Coffee with Innovate Finance. And in the meantime, thanks so much.
Thank you, Janine. It's been a pleasure. We enjoyed it.